everybody. Justin Solheim, director of the documentary film Strong. I'm here with strongman competitor DEREK Poundstone. Derek's been a professional strongman for 10 years, recently retired. And Derek, you have quite the fan following. They've asked me a series of questions, and they were hoping that they could get you to answer them.
That's what I'm here for.
All right, we got 5 questions. Without further ado, simple, uncut, raw, here we go. Dasking Gabe, these are all their Instagram usernames, by the way. Dasking Gabe asks, what were your most important or most contributing factors, such as nutrition, recovery, or workouts, that resulted in your being so lean and so massive at once while you were a competitor?
I think that, I think of my body as a tool, right? Like if you're going to use a tool to fix your car, for instance, take off a lug nut, use a certain wrench. And my body was basically a tool for my accomplishments in the sport of strongman. So that tool was really shaped by the way I trained. There are a lot of people know that I had a specific style of training called pain tolerance. So I would do a lot of high rep sort of stuff. But then I also would push my body into these huge overload situations. There's some videos out there that really, just to give someone an idea, that if I capture something on video, I probably have done that 10 times before, or have done things that are even more extreme. It's just winded. Some of the stuff that we captured on film was 7, 8, 9 years ago. So you didn't really have cameras on your phone. But for instance, that 800-pound deadlift for 9 reps and the 750 for 10 reps. That sort of stuff I think is what shaped my body into having a quote-unquote impressive physique. I was always lean because I didn't want to carry much weight. I'm not a huge eater anyways, but I just found that when I competed in World's Strongest Man heavier, which the heaviest I ever competed in World's Strongest Man was 2012, and look at the end result. 2012, and look at the end results. I didn't make it to the final. I had plenty of overall strength, just my conditioning was off. And when you're carrying stuff, if you're a big 400-pound guy, you're playing into your strength by being heavy. What's 10 or 15 pounds? But at 300 pounds or 310 pounds, I wasn't necessarily a svelte guy. I wasn't small by any stretch of imagination. But carrying 10 or 15 pounds extra for me, it just was too detrimental. So I would try to keep my weight so it was a perfect compromise between strength and conditioning, and that's the ultimate, I think, litmus test of a true professional elite strongman. It's not just being able to do 1 rep. That's powerlifting. Strongman, I think, comes from the ability to withstand force. I think of Louis Sears had fortissimus engraved on his lifting belt, for lack of a better term, that belt that he would wear. He had fortissimus engraved on it, which is where the name of fortissimus came for the competition up in Canada a couple years ago. And that's the root word for fortress. And you think of fortress, you think of an impenetrable force or something there similar to that. And strongman, I think it embodies that. Our bodies are fortresses. It's not about offensive, it's about being able to endure. And I think of World's Strongest Man and the Arnold Classic. They're 2 competitions which really force the athletes not just to put on a show, but to endure just brutality. That's the nature of the game. And look at every year World's Strongest Man. You start with 30 guys, you might get 20 that are relatively healthy by the end of it. And unfortunately, it has taken a few lives in my career. It is by far one of the most amazing sports, one of the most dangerous sports out there, and it really it's a sport for men. I don't mean that in a detrimental way. It's a brutal sport. It's not meant for the faint of heart.
So on that similar topic, the next question by D2D Strongman ties into your brutality, your brutal, sort of training that must take quite a mindset. So leading up to his question here, actually, what was your mindset or demeanor like the last few days and even the last few hours leading up to a major competition? How important was your mental preparation to your game?
For me, strongman was never a means to make money. It was never a way to get fame or fortune, and I think there's a lot of that out there. A lot of people are looking for an outlet to try to make money or whatever. For me, strongman was an outlet. It was an outlet for my life. I had my upbringing wasn't crazy tough, but it was difficult. And, you know, I lost my father young and was put into some, you know, pretty tough predicaments as a young kid. And, you know, I just was always looking for the outlet. And I think that's what made me such a dangerous, brutal competitor, is because I just did it for fun. You know, I'd compete on a Saturday, you know, or, you know, when I reach a top level pro, you know, I'd compete on a Monday through Friday or what have you. But basically, last day would be like a Saturday or a Sunday, and I'm to work on a Monday or a Tuesday, you know. And for those who don't know, I've been a cop for over 11 years, and you know that I like the fact that my hobby is a dangerous, brutal sport, and my job is a dangerous job. And for me, they were both outlets for each other. I think that, you know, I've been successful in both because of my philosophy. I mean, you know, my weekend warrior was being, you know, one of the top strongmen in the world. And when I went out there and competed, it was always for myself. And when I decided to retire is because I realized that I was trying to hold myself to the standard that fans and others were holding me to. And I could no longer attain that because I didn't have the desire anymore. You know, my body was so beaten and broken. I couldn't maintain the intensity. And once that happened, you know, I realized it was time to hang up. And it took me 2 years to actually go on the record saying that I was retired, you know.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I'm sure that wasn't an easy thing for you to say. I mean, you sat on that news for quite a while, knowing that it was inevitably the truth, and that couldn't have been easy for you. But, you know, you did the right thing. You had the baby, and, you know, obviously you married, and it's time to focus on career and family.
Yeah, as a professional athlete, it's you have to be selfish, and it's, you know, I'm okay saying that, but I was a very selfish individual. I gave to the community. I did a bunch of charity work. I would give to the members of my gym, and I would help out the people that were around me. But ultimately, when it came down to it, you know, my life was on hold for 10 years. You know, I didn't go anywhere without having an idea of what I was when I was eating. You know, didn't go on vacation without having an idea of how I was training. My vacations were planned around, you know, my off season, which in strongman is not very long. You know, because you have the Arnold Classic that, you know, historically was, you know, obviously in March, for those that don't know, and then World's Strongest Man used to always be in September. Well, now they're kind of both together, so that the athletes have a better off season, which is great. But I would basically go for March, take off the end of March, and then April, bring up the volume of the training, try to get the weight back on, and then World's Strongest Man was usually in September. So, you know, by June, I was already gearing down into trying to whittle my body down into this tool for whatever I thought World's Strongest Man would need. And it was a guessing game. You know, was it going to be a very heavy competition or light competition, so on and so forth. So when I no longer was doing that for myself, then I had to just say, I'm done.
Well, touching back on what you had said about injury as well, and that you got to a point where your body was just too broken. Actually, Riza Goodfellow, Instagram username Riza Goodfellow, had stated that it's been well documented that there's a high rate of injury in the sport of strongman. How did you mentally get past training through those major injuries, such as your back injury, or, you know, current, you know, your quad injury, and today you're going to be deadlifting? How do you mentally get past the pain to do what you need to do to be successful in the sport?
You know, strongman is kind of like a microcosm of life, and to be successful in the sport is no different than being successful in life. And the really true testament of a champion isn't the guy that can go out there and win one competition, but the guy that can go out there time and time again and do what needs to be done. And you know, the injuries are going to happen, and there's two type of athletes. There's those that have been injured, and there's those that are going to be injured. And you know, you have to just say to yourself, you know, it's going to happen more than likely at some point in my career, and I have to just be willing to deal with that. And that was my biggest fear when I was younger. When I was, you know, in my early 20s, I was like, God, I can't imagine what would happen if I hurt my back. God forbid. You know, 2006, I suffered a devastating career-ending back injury. And then that's when I really became a great athlete. Is I no longer was trying to be, you know, living up to, I was no longer trying to create an expectation. I was just going out there and trying to be the best version of myself. And in doing so, I found a motivation that was far superior than any external factor. You know, if someone told me that they were going to give me $1 million to win World's Strongest Man next year, I couldn't do it. you know. But if someone, if I looked deep inside myself and said that, you want to know what, I would be a better man tomorrow if I can go on this path of winning World's Strongest Man, and I convinced myself of that fact, there would be nothing that could stop me. But that's the problem, is that motivation has to come from a place so deep and so dark. It's not a happy place for most people. Most athletes, not everyone, but most have some sort of deep, burning desire that comes from the bowels within. That, I mean, they have to be explored, you know. And instead of going to counseling or whatever, trying to diagnose or be medicated, anyone that knows me knows I'm a few fries short of a Happy Meal, so to speak, you know. And you know, I'm an intense individual, and with that intensity, it comes God knows what sort of medical diagnosis. But for me, an outlet of this. I mean, who the hell tears their quad and 3.5 weeks later is deadlifting? You know, I like to challenge myself. In doing so, I've become a better person.
So I just changed the order of the questions, actually. The last question I'm going to ask you now. Yep. Yeah, I'm going to switch the order. Stephen Cawley, he's actually a personal friend of mine. He's a bodybuilder, just competed in his first bodybuilding contest, took second in his class. And he wants you to touch a little bit more on motivation, like you said, going to that deep, dark place. His question is, how do you find motivation through hardships or obstacles that life throws your way? And I'm going to touch on, you know, you lost your father. I lost mine at a very early age. I think we were actually both about the same age. I was 15. Mm-hmm. You know, how do you find motivation to get through that hardship? If you've ever hit rock bottom, he wants to know, if you hit it, how did you climb out?
You know, rock bottom is a great and beautiful thing. It's the ultimate motivator. You know, everyone's bottom is different. And, you know, for me, my bottom was after my father passed away. It took me about 2 years. He passed away when I was just turned 18. He passed away in February of 2000. You know, it was a brutal time in my life. And ironically, it didn't hit me then. It was years later. It was about a year and a half later or so that I was like, what am I? I mean, I'm a loser. I was working a dead-end job, wasn't really doing anything. I was a high school dropout, and ultimately I had to look in the mirror and say, I wanted to be proud of the person that was looking back. And you know, that motivation has to come from within. It cannot be external. And that's what, unfortunately, we're in a society now where you look at things like you know, Biggest Loser, or you look at things like you know, these shows like American Idol, where the motivating factor is an external, you know, trophy, $1 million prize, whatever the case may be, and that's all good and well. But how successful can you be? And yeah, you know, American Idol, they've gone to be a success. That's great, but why are they doing it? You know, and for me, it was always self and personal satisfaction, and you know, self-discovery, dare I say. You know, and when you do that, I mean, who cares? You know, when you deep down inside, you're the person you are, when that question is asked, and you go out and try to answer it, it doesn't make a difference what you win, what you don't win. As long as you go out there and do your best, then you're a champion. You know, and that I think is the biggest hurdle for most people, is their motivation is wrong. You know, in our society now, the motivation is always wrong. We're always looking for, you know, money, fame, or fortune. You know, the rock star status. And you see it in strongman, you see it in powerlifting, you see it in music, you see obviously rock star status, but you know, the answer has to be answered from within. You know, the question has to come from within, and it has to be answered from within. You know, and sport. That's why sport is amazing. It gives us an outlet to find out who we are.
I have 1,000,001 follow-up questions that I could ask you on that, but this is supposed to be 5 questions only, so I need to refrain, and I need to just ask you the last question. As difficult as that is, Instagram user Coach Marco, this goes back to injury, and we'll close with this. As someone who has suffered several major injuries, how did you go about, and I assume he means mentally, finally saying enough is enough and officially retiring from the sport?
You know, I think there comes a point in time where you have to stop being selfish, and you can only be selfish for so long. And when the toll started to become so great that the burden was shifting to my family, then that was when I had to officially just say it, you know, because I had known in my heart that I was done, because as I alluded to before, you know, I wasn't doing it for myself anymore. So once I I had agreed to myself that I couldn't do it. I didn't have the burning desire inside anymore. Then it was this process of being truthful and realizing that, the burden that was putting on my wife and my unborn child at that point was too great. But then again, as in any athlete, I'm like, well, I'll do a little powerlifting, I tear my quad. And that was the ultimate sort of realization that, what am I doing? This is stupid. It's one thing to go out there and be a healthy 30-year-old guy, 40-year-old guy, or even somewhat healthy. I'm a really healthy guy, but the problem is my body is beat up, from years of lifting, tons of weight. I just can't do it anymore. And nor do I want to. I don't want to put that burden on my wife and my daughter. So that's the best way to find out is, realize why you're doing it. And, some people, they'll lose their wife and kid, they'll get divorced, and listen, and I'm not one to say that's wrong or right. I mean, that's motivation, and they might go on to be great athletes. For me, that's not a path I'm willing to go down. So once you get to that point, then you're done.
I think one of the most frustrating things for me with this interview has been that I can't elaborate more on the things that I want to, but the good news is, and for those of you watching this at home, Derek will be involved with our documentary film Strong. This Top 5 interview is a series of web-based interviews that we're going to do promoting the feature-length documentary film by Chris Bell and myself, Strong. You can stay up to date with information on that documentary on Facebook at facebook.com/Strong Documentary Film, and my Instagram page, Captain Jacked Approved JS, all one word. And we're going to be doing segments like this with all of the athletes and all of the folks that we interview in the documentary film Strong. So as tough as it is to call it, I'm going to say thank you for your time, Derek, and that's a wrap.
Sounds good. Thanks, man. It's always a pleasure.